Dennis, we're here. Yes, we were just giving people a few minutes to join in, um, but I think we could start and they will join as we proceed. So thank you also for joining in. Today, for those who've been joining us in our series during this webinar, the Wellness Clinic in the month of May. We've had different topics, different facilitators sharing with us the insights, and we've had very good discussions around different topics and what is affecting us as a people, as a region, East Africa. And the first topic of this month, we started with Fatuma. You can't hear me. There's an echo. Maybe people could give me a thumbs up if they're hearing me. Oh, Santiago, you are. Thank you. Okay, so Dennis, thank you. Thank you for affirming that. Alex, also thank you for affirming that. So we've had different topics in this month of May. The first topic we had was Santiago, you're saying you can hear but brokenly. I don't know. Check your audio. It's not clear. Let me try and just use my earpods. Just give me a few minutes so that I can just use my earpods. Maybe it'll be better. Is it better now?
Salim, I think we still have an echo. Maybe just try mute and.
Right. And now, Alan?
Yeah, we still get some interference. Is there any other device in the room?
No, actually, I'm just by myself in the boardroom. So I'm wondering why. Better now?
Yeah, we can still hear some feedback.
I don't know where it's coming from because now I'm on I have my AirPods. There's no one in the room. Alan, confirm.
All right, just proceed. I think it's slightly better.
Oh, okay, thank you. Apologies for that. As I was saying that we've been running this wellness clinic on this month of May because it's the mental health awareness month, and it was not a coincidence that we also did the wellness clinic. So we've had different topics, different discussions, different facilitators just coming in to share their learnings, their experience, their expertise with us, and their context. The first time we had the role of the role of art in the mental health space. And then we did also the role of personality at the workplace. How does it play out? In the third week, we talked about demystifying stress, just understanding stress, what it looks like, how it manifests in our bodies, and then what we can do around and about it. Then last week, again, a very interesting conversation and topic that we had that was suggested by one of us was why men, human rights defenders, do not seek therapy. And if you missed any of these topics, we've been sharing the recordings on our social media platforms. So if you did have a chance and opportunity to join in the session, don't feel like you've missed out. We've been sharing all these recordings on our social media platforms, and we'll still do the same for today's. And today we are just wrapping up these conversations with one of our resource persons from Costa Rica, Santiago, but I won't introduce it because he will do that. But before I invite Santiago, there's something I need to read from one lady who's also a psychologist like us, who wrote around the issue of collective care. And I thought it was a very good write-up that she did, which also will form part of our conversations today around collective care, because we can't do healing without people around us, without our support networks. We can't negate that critical fact that we need each other, and also we need also an enabling environment, community for us to thrive. So if you allow me just to read what Angie from Green Street Network wrote around the discussion that we're gonna have today, and then I invite our facilitator. And this is what she wrote, and I quote: as we conclude Mental Health Awareness Month 2024, we've all heard the alarming statistics. Mental health issues are on the rise, with the recent research suggesting that nearly 10, those are alarming numbers, 9 in 10 people now struggle with their mental well-being. This is a significant increase from the commonly cited 1 to 4 figure often used in Kenya. But as we grapple with this growing crisis, it's crucial that we pause to consider the root causes. Like, why do we experience mental health? Why are these numbers increasing? Is the solution simply to prescribe more medication and call for increased mental health services and research? Or do we need to dig deeper and ask more fundamental questions around why so many people are experiencing unhappiness and despair right now? And you can relate to what is happening in our country now. I mean, these things are just going north. I mean, things are just going south. I mean, lifestyle change, economic crisis, disaster crisis, health crisis, name any crisis that you may think of. We are seeing doctors who are on strike, other professionals are on strike, teachers are on strike. We don't have vaccine in our hospital. The budget cut may be on the education, the feeding program with our children. All these have a bearing on our mental well-being. So what does that look like for us people? Then she goes on and say, we believe it's time for a candid conversation, which even we're having today, about the societal factors contributing to this crisis. From the pressure of modern work, the social media, to growing economic inequality and uncertainty, numerous complex issues are impacting our collective being. So as leaders in providing community mental health support, it's our responsibility not only to support those struggling with mental health challenges, but also to champion systematic changes that foster a more supportive, inclusive, and fulfilling society for all. Their collective care support system that needs to be built to address the systematic issues that impact our collective well-being. And then she poses a question to us. What are our thoughts? And none other just to help us, just to put our thoughts together and just share experiences, insights from their context with us than Santiago Navarro from Costa Rica. So Santiago Navarro, welcome. And just share with us what has worked in your country, what is not working, what can we learn from how can we tap, how can we collaborate, how can we network. So this is your platform. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to me stay here today. I'm so excited about this presentation. I'm in the other part of the planet. First of all, I want to excuse my English because I will be reading a large part of the presentation. I have a presentation. So I'm a psychologist, clinical psychologist, and community psychologist. In Fundación Acceso is my organization. I'm an organizational development coordinator and co-coordinator of the psychosocial protection area. To us, to our view of the collective care and psychosocial approach, is so important the context. Is the root of our view of the psychosocial approach. So I want to share my presentation here. Yes. So in Costa Rica is here. You can see the map. You can see United States at the north, at the south, Mexico. And the next countries at south, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, are Central America. And the next country at south is Colombia. So between Mexico and Colombia are our work in Fundación Acceso. Costa Rica is not the same country that Puerto Rico. This is not the country of Bad Bunny or Ricky Martin. Puerto Rico is an island next to Central America, but Costa Rica is in the continent. So in this location, our context is the most dangerous area in the world to defend the rights. Mexico, Central America, and Colombia. You can see this map is from a report of Frontline Defenders of this year. Is a global analysis 2023. And if you can see here in Central America and in America, this is the most dangerous place to defend the rights of the world. You can see the quantity of deaths in Mexico, 30, 19 in Honduras, and 142 in Colombia. Only 2023. This is a so dangerous area to defend rights. Maybe like the other spaces of the global south, we have a lot of repression and criminalization, stigmatization, campaigns of hatred of human rights in all the countries, conservatism in that bears advance in the rights of women and LGBTEQ populations, legitimacy of extractivism, transnational companies and states in various territories, many of them historically guarded by indigenous and peasant populations, socioeconomic inequality in our long history of colonialism, capitalist, which is extractivist of cheap labor, ecology, and local knowledge. And the last one is so important for our view of collective care. This context make to the activist born out of social organization. As due to the constant emergency work and high impact accompaniment on the front line in the struggle for rights. So in our organization, Fundación Acceso, we work in all these countries for the integral protection. One of it is the digital protection, the other the physical protection, and the other the psychosocial protection. We mix the three kinds of protection, and this is integral. So the collective care is part of one of each. I want to ask you, how different or similar is your context from here, from Central America, and your country?
Santiago, I think, is struggling, or I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Here is better?
Yes, Santiago.
It's better. You can see the presentation?
Sure.
Yes. And I need to repeat the exposition?
I think we can hear you well.
Okay. So this is our context, and this is our location in Central America. We have maybe the same or so same context. I want to ask you if how different or similar is your context? This is Said Salim Ochango. Yeah? Salim Ochango, the main challenge facing here is police harassment, and also in some areas they are seen as enemies of the community. Okay. We have in Fundación Acceso a background of our psychosocial approach. This background is so important to us because have a root in Latin American perspective, and these 6 backgrounds are so important to create our perspective of psychosocial approach. The first of it is the psychology of liberation, based on the psychologist from El Salvador, here in Central America, Martín Baró. It assumes a social and political perspective, not reduced to the individualism of some dominant psychological perspective, to understand historical social oppressions and support collective process of liberation. So, to this view, we need to see the collective perspective, not only the individualism in the traditional perspective of psychology. The other background is the popular education based on the Paulo Freire from Brazil. It's an educational proposal that takes into account the concrete reality of people and the relation of oppression in which they are immersed towards liberating forms of education. So, the third background is the action investigation participatory, based on the Fals Borda from Colombia, here in Latin America. He highlights the importance of actions going hand in hand with reflection and research, and vice versa, with the aim of the social transformation of reality, not just its analysis. The other 3 background are the intersectional feminism, based on Crenshaw Black feminism. She locates that the heteropatriarchal structure that fosters the oppression of women and sex gender dissidents interacts with other oppressions due to racialization, social class, age, and others. The other background to us are the colonial term, positions colonialism and cultural, social, and economic imperialism as a part of the present of oppression in our context in the global south, historically dependent on the global north. And the last one, the self-care, collective care, and internal strengthening from organizations such as the Urgent Action Fund for Women's Human Rights, other organizations so important to us, to Fundación Acceso, ECAP from Guatemala here in Central America, and other organization, Aluna from Mexico, who position the importance of a slogan of caring for those who care. The preoccupation to caring the people who care, and giving the same central importance to the internal care of the organization as to the care that the organization does externally. So we have two dimensions, the externally care and the internal care. I want to ask you, did anyone know some of these perspectives before? Are familiar for you? Oh, I read in the chat, Sipora, I feel it is more similar, but we get the effects of cultural difference that may lead to human rights work a bit more complicated and dangerous. Bahati, extrajudicial killings is one of the greatest challenges we have in Kenya. Jose Faustin, I agree with Salim and Hesburn. There is also a lot of cyberbullying. Maureen, main challenges facing human rights here in Kenya is insecurities. You can't predict your tomorrow when are dealing with any case that police are involved. What is it? Yes, Paulo Freire. Yes, Paulo Freire is the most popular from Brazil, this perspective of popular education. Charles said, I was not familiar. Millian, also there is an issue of profiling to youth. Okay, post the perspective again. This is the perspective. Popular education on Paulo Freire from Brazil. The other one is the psychology of liberation from Ignacio Martín Baró here in Central America. This is a social perspective. He had a highlight of the historical social oppressions and the collective process of liberation. The Action Investigation Participatory from Colombia. And intersectional feminism from the Black feminists in the United States, and the colonial term, that is this view about a critical view of the colonialism and imperialism in the global world. And the other is the collective care and self-care from a collective perspective. So, any of this perspective, did anyone know? To us here in Latin America, these perspectives are so important to understand our view of the psychology. is a critical tradition and political tradition in our context to view critical to the individualism of some dominant psychological perspectives. Okay. Redemptors say thanks and new perspectives, or maybe the way they are framed and cited is new. Okay, so very well. So hearing to our organization, Fundación Acceso from Central America, our perspective of psychosocial approach following this organization from Mexico, Aluna, and this organization from Guatemala, ECAP. We understand the psychosocial approach as a way to read the sociopolitical and historical context, to see the world taking into account the relationship of power and oppression in society. This is so central for our view. This perspective requires a view from various dimensions: the personal, the individual, family, familiar, networks, support networks of the person, social organization, institutions, and culture. Includes customs, spirituality, beliefs, ritual, etc. So this continues from individual to the culture are so important to us. Not only the individual, not only the social, then the bones between these two dimensions. This approach, psychosocial approach, have two dimensions, the two principal dimensions. The first is the impacts, psychosocial impacts, and the other, the psychosocial resilience. So the first, psychosocial impacts of the sociopolitical violence are usually expressed in psychological symptoms like anxiety, nightmares, intrusive flashbacks, overthinking, affective paralysis, depression, feeling of helpless, etc. Other dimension, the physical symptoms, allergies, intestinal problems, headaches, sleep problems, respiratory problems, muscle pain. And the other dimension, the collective symptoms: internal tensions, joint fear, group anxieties, communication difficulties, political hopelessness, relational conflicts, individualization and fragmentation, social polarization. We read these impacts with a root in the sociopolitical violence. It's not only an individual issues. It's a sociopolitical, it's social problem. Next to the analysis of the impacts of psychosocial impacts, we strengthen the psychosocial resilience. This strengthen refers to the ways that people and communities already have to resist and build ways to confront the psychosocial impacts of sociopolitical violence. This includes group training, educational training, individual and collective psychotherapy. So if you can see the cycle at the right of the share, we see the psychosocial protection, we see the sociopolitical violence, a critical read about the sociopolitical violence, an analysis of psychosocial impacts, strengthening of psychosocial resilience, other ways like group training, psychotherapy, and the next is the collective care plan. This is the way to struggle with against the sociopolitical violence. So I want to ask you if these terms are familiar or not to you. Okaka said, greetings, advocates of justice. Yes. I hope after the training we can get the PowerPoint. Yes, okay. HMD, yes?
Yes, I'm Emily from Save the Family Foundation organization. I find them familiar. They're very familiar.
Why? Emily, nice to meet you.
When it comes to something like a GBV, they are very common here, and they are caused by usage of alcohol and drug abuse. So we have a lot of domestic violences. Yeah.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, these problems are so commonly in our context. So we introduce or we see the collective care as a part inside of our psychosocial approach. It's not only an individual issue, it's a social issue. So our collective care in Fundación Acceso, I want to see if you say, great. This will really help us follow ups. Okaka, for some of us, we are not familiar with this. Okay. This is a particular view of psychosocial approach. This is not that traditional psychology individual approach. We have a zoom in this relationship between individual and culture. To us, it's so important to see the collective perspective. So, in this our collective care, our view in Fundación Acceso here in Central America, we think that the collective care is not just personal self-care. It's not the individual self-care. Yes, this is important. So this is not only the self-care. It's a part of the collective care. If the individual is okay, the collective is okay. If the individual is not okay, have problems, the collective is not okay. So we think the two dimensions bounded. The collective care is not reduced to recreational activity once a month, or going to physical therapy or the spa periodically, or having a relaxation meeting every so often. Yes, this is important. So collective care is not only this. Care, as conceptualized by feminism, constitutes a political tool and a collective tool that allows maintaining not only the defense of rights as an engine of social transformation, but also as an engine of life, its physical, mental, emotional, and ecological health. So we see the collective care, the bond between individual care, the self-care, and the social and organizational care. To us, our collective care, it means breaking with the sacrificial tradition of activism, of considering that I am a better activist the more sacrifice, the more pain, and the less self-care I perform. We have a long tradition here in Latin America that see this sacrificial tradition like the only way you can practice your activities, you can perform your activities like a sacrificial tradition. You have to sacrifice, you have to feel the pain of the victims, you have to have less self-care. And if you do it, you are a better activist. It means that we must discuss the daily times of activism, the times for leisure, for recreation, for enjoyment, to be well in the heart and in life. It means be aware if the stress peaks are always high and there are no regulation, we will have problems of health. If we are 24/7 in our activities in emergencies, we have the week in stress peaks, we have problems of health at the time. It means defining what we understand to be an emergency and what is not an emergency, in order to be able to give time out to the hours of attention, action, use of chats, emails, and meetings. Have times to disconnect. This is so important to us. So, our practice of collective care. This is our vision, our organizational vision of collective care. You have to remember the two dimensions of the collective care. The external, what we do in our service to other organizations, and what we do to collective care at the internal dimension of the organization. In the first instance, we understand it is an institutional practice rooted in the structure of the organization. Collective care is not just an individual or occasional practice. So to this, in Fundación Acceso, we take into account these parts of the collective care. The first of one, the ethical framework and principles. The organizational life with an organization culture that guarantees safe spaces, free of violence and protected rights. Yes, this is the first step for a collective care. The second is the respect for labor and contractual rights. We understand as central the struggle for respect for labor rights, avoiding exploitation, and promoting good treatment. These two parts are so important to us. The collective care is a topic about ethical and safe spaces, organizational safe spaces, and is a topic about respect for labor rights. This is the two principal topics of our practice. The other three are so important to us. Is the internal collective care plan. It involves the use of burnout prevention modalities, constant internal improvement of group relationships, the organizational climate, and the possibility of dialogue of difference. To us, it's so important this institutional practice rooted in the structure of the organization. We have this internal collective care plan. It includes the holistic health fund. It allows each person in the organization to use a fund to take care of their physical, mental, or spiritual health. We have this fund to go to the psychotherapy or physiotherapy or to the gym or to the spa or to spiritual formation or medicine or other parts of holistic health. And the last one is the psychosocial supervisions. Inspired by this organization, a CAP from Guatemala, we create spaces in which an external person accompanies the team to detect discomfort where and fear or concerns, whether they are product of accompaniment to other organization or a product of internal relationships. Remember that two dimensions: the accompaniment to other organizations, problems about it, like burnout or like vicarious traumatization, or the other dimension, the product of internal relationships, bad communication, etc. So this is how it is promoted as a space for preventing or caring for burnout. For vicarious traumatization, this way presenting symptoms from hearing so many stories of pain, and internal communication conflicts. So this is our perspective practice of collective care. To us, it's so important to break some of the traditional views of the collective care. The first, that collective care is only an individual self-care. The other, the collective care reduced to recreational activities. They are important, so this is not only this. The other is that to our is so important that collective care is an institutional practice rooted in the structure of the organization. The other, this ethical framework that guarantees the safe spaces in the organization. The other, the respect for labor rights. The other, the internal collective care plan, the burnout prevention, the prevention of the vicarious traumatization. The other, the holistic health fund, this opportunity to the person to take care of their physical, of mental or spiritual health. This is a way of self-care. Yes, this part is individual. And the other is the psychosocial supervisions that is in group process. So this approach breaks some of the traditional views of what is self-care. So I want to ask you, what do you think of this perspective of collective care? Are any of these collective care practices new to you? Are new or?
Santiago, there's also a question on the chat. Is the Holistic Health Fund sponsored by the government in your context?
No, it's sponsored by cooperation and donors, not the government. So it's so difficult to our context that the government sponsor this kind of possibilities. We in the organization, we struggle with the donors and cooperation this possibility that we have funds to this. It's a struggle every year, every contract with our donors to have this possibility. It's not easy because the donors want to, maybe this is not so important to them. So to us, it's so important. So we struggle to it. Salim said, in Kenya, we are still struggling to get wellness support as human rights, but there is an ongoing campaign to search for funds and build a safe house for human rights. Yes. Haven't said, yes, this new to me, but actually a very good practice. Yes, I guarantee care for within and with those around us. Yes, this is so important. And this important, this view to us is so important, this communitary perspective, not only an individual psychology perspective. So someone else. So some comment. The approach to collective care is refreshing and very relevant to our context. Who cares? This question is so important to us. Comes from the feminist. This is slogan. Caring for those who care. Matthew said Holistic Health Fund is new because even the funding agencies doesn't accept a budget for personal care. Yeah, it's a struggle. And it's a decolonial, maybe in this perspective, decolonial term in the share. This perspective have a very critical positions about the tradition of colonialism and imperialism, and this perspective is so important to us to make a relationship with our donors in a collective care and in a view of horizontal relationship between the global south and the global north. And it's important, is it important to us in the global south, this perspective of collective care, we have to struggle with our donors to the possibility to this sponsor. Marian Catana, a powerful approach to every organization to emulate. Yes, it's an important view. I share the PowerPoint. This is a Canva, and I will share the references about these organizations and documents and text about these themes. So any other comment or? Yes, Rachel.
Hi, so I hope I'm audible. My name is Rachel from Coalition for Grassroots Human Defender of Pussy Power. So I'm very passionate about collective care into the nature of also how, for example, from a global south perspective, for now it has been part of our lives apart from just our work. But my question is, from my experience being both as HRD but also in the feminist movement, to what level are we able to put in the I like to set the boundary of this has been part of our life as also, let's say, African people of collective care. But on the other hand, there's this part of also where collective care or self-care has been commercialized or has been capitalized in such a way that one, it's becoming too expensive to be able to access. Like an example, someone will say for them to have collective care, they need to be taken for an holiday or an expensive place. But for someone else, a collective care or well-being support is just being in the rural community or not doing work and taking care of themselves and eating healthy. But on the other hand, I've also seen where a bit of also, when you talk about class politics, where some middle class, let's say, within the space, will weaponize it when being asked accountability question, especially if you're coming from a grassroots community. So to what level also do we ensure that there's accountability, but at the same time not harming each other, but at the same time not being used by middle class when asked accountability question, but also coming from the grassroots community. I'd really want to hear your thoughts on that. For something I struggle with when you ask a comrade from the middle class because they understand the politics of English and language around collective care and self-care, the level of defense and making you're looking more perpetrator than them and arming them more. I really love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yes. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you a lot. This is so important. I'm agree with your perspective. This is a expensive and commercial trending topic in this moment. But this perspective in what I sharing in this moment is so important to this. We think that the collective care is not just personal self-care and is not reduced to recreational activity or the holistic fund. To us, is principal this political tool that means this breaking. I don't know in your context, but here in our context is so important. This struggle, breaking with the sacrificial tradition of activism. This consideration about if you are a better activist with more sacrifice and more pain and less self-care. This is not expensive or not. It's not a topic about resources. It's about a perspective of what we do with our time and our strategic vision of organizations. It means the relation to discuss the daily times of activism, time out from activism or time out from our labor. This means that we're about the continuous stress peaks always high in our work of emergencies, and this possibility to give time out. These principles are so important to us, and not necessarily you need a lot of resources to do it. Yes, for these recreational activities once a month, physical therapy and spa periodically, relaxation, yoga, this kind of aspects of the self-care that is elitism way of to see the collective care that is important, yes, but this other perspective of collective care, how we have time with our family or our partners without the activism is so important to us here in Central America. I don't know in your context if it is important. So these other parts of what we see the collective care here in our organization have these other parts, the safe spaces inside our organizations, the respect for labor rights, the plan and psychosocial supervisions. Now, these practices, we think that not all of it is an expensive way. It's a perspective of how in our organization make the strategical view.
Santiago, there's also another question from Javan. He says he has two questions. In this form, are there any creative involvement of artists to achieve its success? And two, what are the levels of collective care practice, noting that we have various stages of need in terms of how one or many are affected by the human rights work? It's on the chart.
Okay, Habangofula. Sorry, I'm reading the question. In this forum, are there any creative involvement? Yes, to us it's so important the cultural and situated perspective. Is this perspective is a basic perspective that you can situate in your context and your working. If you are artist, or if you are have gender practices or protecting the peasants and indigenous territories, you can create your way in your context. So Salima say, thanks. We share the notes, yes, in the emails. And Kepta said, thanks for the presentation and share. It is useful reference for us as we grapple with our own challenges and ideas to establish collective care and wellness in our part of the world. Appreciate you sharing the PowerPoint. Yes. Odiamba said, how do we address the concept of collective care as a creative and transformative tool as human rights actors or organizations concurrent with our work? Yeah. This is so important. This part. At present, any care is integrated, but it is at best episodic or tokenism. Yeah, I think that this first step, the conceptual and ideological step, is so important. How we conceptualize the collective care, how we do to not reduce to a trending topic or an expensive topic or an individualistic view of enjoyment and leisure. No, this is a political perspective. It's a political tool, like a feminist. Some ways of feminists say to us, it's a political tool because maintain the defense of rights. If you are every time with peaks of stress and you are every time in emergencies and you are every time listening histories of pain, at time your health is not very well and you have to to practice this collective care to prevent this risk. So in this view, this conceptual view, this is a political tool. This is not a tending topic. This is not a expensive perspective. This is a right to the organizations to prevent the risk of burnout, the risk of vicarious traumatism, and to prevent the problems of health of the organization. And this is a political view. This is not elitism perspective. Havan, what is your second? You can write again your second question, please. Jennifer said, I think it's just hard, even at institution level, to understand the concept of collective care. Maybe due to mindset, attitudes, perception, or new phenomenon. It's something that we need to invest in. Yes, it's important, this struggle. This struggle is not a, is so political tool. And this is why we consider that this in first instance is an institutional practice rooted in the structure of the organization. It's not an individual issue, it's not an occasional practice, it's not this going to spa once a month. This is not, yes, this is important, but it's more important care who cares. Prevent the risk of burnout, the risk of vicarious traumatism. This is so important to us because we need to, in long term, have a good health to defend rights, and it's a political perspective. So in this perspective is so important, the struggle, the conceptual and ideological struggle, to not reduce like a trending topic. It's not only the yoga or the spa sometimes. So say, what are the levels of collective care practice that we can engage in, and with noting that we have various stages of need in terms of how one or many are affected by the levels. I don't know the answer. I think that the answer is maybe situated to you in your context. I think that this is a open view of collective care. I don't know if we have levels. I think the first of all is this struggle to change the mind of the organizations or the attitudes to the donors, to view, to see the importance of this conceptualization of collective care, like a institutional practice, like a political tool to care who cares. This is so important. The people of the organization in this moment are in burnout, have high peaks of stress every time, and this is important to struggle. Sipura said, Kingwa said, some of our countries were started up as businesses. Kenya set up the Imperial British East Africa Company, and hence their approach to cities as objects to be exploited via taxation rather than to be invested in or nurtured. This framework is what underpins the educational, political, and social framework. Under such a framework, the concept of care is alien and even dangerous. Yeah. This is because it's a political concept. It's not a elitism perspective. It's not the high class perspective. This is so important to medium or other classes. This is a revolutionary concept because this is not for the social transformation to the external view. is a concept to the internal view of the organization. And these two dimensions are so revolutionary. Care, Sipora said, care and collective care is a necessity. Organizations should not view it as a favor, but instead as an approach to strengthen their human resources. Yes, this is so important because in our organization we struggle about the human rights of other people, other organization, other collective. What is about our human rights inside our organization. We have to struggle these dimensions, the external and the internal, not only the external. King was say, people power and people organizing is what would enable the framework to be rewritten and redesigned, consciously and intentionally setting up new cultures and ways of being. From the real bottom up, rather than the top down, it won't come from the top. Yes, this perspective you can say it in what I share in the PowerPoint. This perspective of psychology of liberation of Ignacio Martin Baró, here from Central America in the last century, is so important in this view. And it's so important to view the psychosocial approach because he said, yes, the psychotherapy individual is so important. It's very important. But it's not only this. We have to change the structures and the historical social oppressions to change the individual psychology. And we have to see in this way the relationship between individual and social and cultural structures. To us, is so important, the relation. It's a change in these two dimensions, external, internal, and individual and social perspective, not only one. This is the reason because it's a dangerous perspective to the elitism and the people who have power, political power and economic power. Matthews said the colonial turn is gradually picking up among the political class in Kenya, as some politicians have reduced their electorates to voting tools. Once they, politicians, assume power and authority, they turn to become oppressors more also on modern political freedom. Yes, this is here in Latin America is usual. So our part in this, our social organization and civic actors is every time positioning our critical perspective and view critical positions about it. Yeah. So I don't know if you have other comments. So I like a lot. It's a pleasure to me. I'm excited about this discussion. It's so important to our organization, this perspective of the psychosocial approach and protection. This view of collective care, this is like a tool to the social organization, to our struggles. And it's important that human rights, not only to the external struggle, we have to have a struggle internal, our organization, to care us, to care to defend who defends rights. This is so important to us. This is so important, and this perspective of we have to institutionalize this perspective. It's not an occasional or individual or elitist perspective. King was saying, really good presentation. Will be able to get the presentation? Yes, of course. I shared the presentation, and I want to share to the documents the references and bibliography to us. Yeah. The key challenge, the first of all, is this conceptual change. We have to struggle inside our organization to change the mind of what is it. The next step is with our funds, our donators, our cooperation, or the state to change this mind. What we think, this is not a perspective of high class practice. This is not only a high class practice. This is a right. You have to have the wellness. This prevent of burnout. This is a right to us. This is a struggle to defend rights, and this challenge is so important. This what we are doing in this moment, discussing and change minds of what is it. This is the first step, I think. And the other is this struggle to find funds or find strategic planification in our organization to institutionalize these practices, and then we can struggle to find resources to it. But first, we have to have the strategic vision of why this is important, why this is so important that the external services is so important, our internal services too. And this is a so important and political tool. Yeah, the first is that turn our minds and struggle to our strategical perspective in our organizations, and then the struggle for resources. But first is this strategical perspective. This is not a high-class perspective. This is not a very expensive perspective. It's a first and right to us. And me, welcome to Kenya. Really good presentation. Getting it from Jerry Conti, Kenya. Thank you. Welcome all of you here in Central America. This is not Puerto Rico. We don't have a lot of reggaeton from Bad Bunny, but it's a so beautiful country too. So I don't know if you have other comment or question or intervention. So it's a pleasure to me to discuss with you and change perspective. I'm so excited about this presentation to the other continent. It's not usual to me. It's not usual to speak English too. So I'm so pleasant with this.
Thank you so much, Santiago, even just waking you up at this hour. You should know that I think it's around 2 a.m. now, Santiago, in your country. Yeah, so you can hear me, Santiago?
Yes. Can you repeat the question?
No, I'm saying we are really grateful, even for you just sharing your knowledge with us, your experiences, the challenges also that you've gone through, and even allowing yourself to wake up at the wee hours of the morning in your country just to be with to be with us and just share that knowledge. We don't take it lightly. We are really so grateful and privileged just to have it from you. And as you've heard from all our participants, we are really looking forward once you share with us the notes and also those references where we can even research further, read more about collective care. It will be really helpful to us and useful so that we can shape how we want also our collective care to look like. So we shall still keep talking on our usual email once I receive the notes and presentation and any other useful resource materials that you think will help us in conceptualizing what collective care indeed looks like in our context. I think it will be really important. So we are grateful. I think for our participant, before we close up this webinar session, allow me to ask two things. I think two or three. We've had the context of from Santiago, and what I think I've really heard him say is, when the self is hurting, the community is hurting. When the community is hurting, or the collective, the self also is hurting. And most of our pain and our anger, it's driven from the political class, the political context, the things, the issues of stress, the issues of burnout are what he said, the external issues. And I'm seated here and I am thinking, how do we, number one, decolonize what we think has been our practice of what maybe self-care looks like or collective care looks like in our context. So that is question number one. How do we colonize that? Because it starts with our mindset when we say self-care. And Kenyans, and maybe I'm so sure even people from Uganda and Tanzania can agree with me. When we say self-care in our context is places we go to, things that we do outside, but still the same push factors are with us in the communities. You know, we still come back to people's homes that have been demolished. We still have come back to the high increase cost of living. We still come back to fares that have been hiked. So how do we decolonize our minds of what self-care looks like? Then in terms of the next steps in our conversations and our discussion, how do we conceptualize what collective care looks like in our context? And it's a conversation I think we can take forward with us, and if people are interested, we can still keep having this conversation. And then lastly, how do we create a holistic health fund to work for us? Because people who have been in the sector can attest to this. It is very hard to fundraise for monies for taking care of self, where else we are also acknowledging that we go through pain and hurt because of the social, political, economic issues that are happening. So how do we as a people, as civic actors in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, convince partners to have this fund set aside just to take care of us as we also take care of business and we also take care of work? So I'll maybe invite 2-3 hands. People want to speak into the two things as we plan to wind up. The rest maybe of us can just share their insights on the chart. Anyone who wants to speak, please just raise up your hand so that maybe we can hear some insights from you, and maybe some of us can also type in the chart.
Salima, I can say some words about your intervention. I think that collective care is not new. It's not that maybe the concept of the perspective of the the words to express is a recently named, but the collective care is an ancestral practice of our global south. Our practice, everyday practice in our countries, our communities, our spaces, these mutual support are present every time. The care of people, of neighbors, when they are in trouble, when there is a crisis, we take care in our territories. This is an ancestral practice. And when my neighbor or my familiar or my partner have a problem, we care about it. So this is a perspective to give a value of this, to give a name of this, to give a sponsor of this. These are ancestral practices of our communities. We all the days have collective care about the people who our love, and the practice of the social organization is a institutionalization of this collective, historical collective care. We care about the human race. We care about other people. We care about the victims of violence. This is the practice of everyday collective care. And so when we named like it with a concept, like a tool, we are recognizing this importance and give a value of this importance and struggle with it, with something that in our everyday life we practice. So in the other reflection is about how we can demonstrate and struggle for these resources and this way of perspectives. I think that it's important to demonstrate the consequences of our activism, of being in high stress and high impact activism and practices of defend the human rights. It's important to demonstrate what is happening to our bodies, to our psychosocial impacts of every day have to listening histories about violence, histories about bad consequences about the social political violence. What are the consequences in our bodies, our individual bodies and collective bodies of this? And this is important to demonstrate this. We have people in our organizations with high stress every day and have continuously physical expressions, symptoms, and psychological. Yes, this is important to demonstrate this like a problem to have to work. Kim was said, Kazimierz Dabrowski, I don't know, I don't know, he, Polish psychologist, highlights self-education as a key of learning, maneuver the environment after trauma, collective education, and healthy. Yes, this is a background important to our perspective. Yes, well said. Collective care has been part of our daily lives and global south. We are protecting us every time in this context of violence. And this we have to conceptualize that and struggle to position it. My suggestion is that the program coordinator to share this concept with the funding partners to the need for the social support. Yeah, you have to demonstrate the consequences of activity also of who cares other people. It's so important. This perspective of psychosocial supervisions from the organization ECAP here in Central America, in Guatemala, ECAP, they say that it's so important, like in clinical psychology, is usually these supervisions, and they say it's important to an organization the supervision of the work. We need spaces to talk about what is the consequence of our service, how we feel about listening histories of violence continually, or how we feel to stay in emergencies continuously and high peaks of stress. What the consequences of tensions, internal conflicts in the organization. We have space. We need spaces to talk about it, to process this wellness, and this is so important to us. Sylvia said, I've really learned a lot. Sorry. Presentation, it was so informative. Salima, thanks Sylvia. Matthews, Captain said, for the reflection, comparative analysis of Santiago presentation and Ubuntu Utu. Yes, this is a so powerful concept. Collective care is a continuation of the struggle against individual and structural violence, cultural disruption, and political and economic alienation, and mobilization of community resources into collective care and wellness could be very useful. And this perspective, if we think that this collective care is an ancestral practice, we need some resources, extra resources, but we are doing every day. So with the resources we have now, we can strengthen the collective care. King was saying all systems, not just education, information system, financial system, family systems, community governance, are they set up to enable rejuvenation and nourishing set up towers, one thinking, audit all of this. Yes, I agree with you. So I don't know if you have other intervention, questions, reflections. I'm so pleasant to stay here with you in the other part of the world. If you don't have any questions or comments, I think that we are okay. Thank you a lot for listening to me and share your comments and perspective. I'm so pleasant. Kingwa.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. And yeah, like I'm writing paragraphs in the chat. It's like this is just sparking all my dopamine. So thank you for this. This was so good. Just something that came up as you were ending, because I was talking about systems auditing, is that because we sometimes kind of like look at resources as the main thing, the main challenge, but even some of the things like right now we're in a place where our systems are like so broken and they're breaking us, which means that the time is right for disruption. And what does that mean? It means that there's such opportunities to bring up new even like enterprises, even like new actual businesses, like when we look at in Kenya, like for example the private school system, it came up in what's the word, it came up as a response to the breaking down of the public school system. So even all these places that we are seeing problems, those are actually opportunities for all of us here to figure out what is the thing, what is the solution that I have to add value, and how does it bring value to me. So that just came to occurred to me that even as we're doing the systems audit, it's about getting to the place where we're even stepping into our agency, and even us formulating new ways of harnessing our resources. It doesn't always have to be grants. Yesterday, I attended a grant making session for the arts in I think it was East Africa, and it was actually Kenya. Like almost 200, 300 people attended, and there were like about maybe like less than 10 10 grants, and it was like about 7 organizations together. And I was like, we have to really start thinking about the new ways of resourcing ourselves and enabling dignity, because that's then what will be sustainable. Yeah, so thank you.
So. Thank you, Kingwa. So important, your perspective and critical perspective is so important. So important to think the psychology in this critical and political perspective. I think that two ways to think. What do you say? I think first that in context of crisis, and this context, continuously apocalyptic context that we are in this moment in the world, that what has historically sustained us is, in this context of crisis, apocalyptic context, etc. What has historically sustained us is the collective care, the mutual care, the community traditions, the way if I take care, they take care of me. This power of this ancestral perspective is so important. Is positioning this practice of every day, and this is the way to respond to crisis or social crisis continuously. And I think the struggle of concepts and frameworks is so important. This decolonial term is so important to revelate this colonialism that is not is a historical system of exploitation of our countries, but not only in companies. The financing system of donators and cooperation of social organization, we need labor rights. We need relations, a better relationship. We are not people to be exploited for the donors of the North, global North. We need to struggle this concept of the colonial relationships in all the ways, includes our financing, uh, our support, our forms of take money to do our labor. And this is so important. These concepts like the colonial relationships, the social psychology, that collective care is so important to have a strategic view in our organization to positioning this perspective. So important. So I don't know. Thank you, Kingwa. Fatuma said, a very informative session. Indeed, collective care is crucial for the caregivers. Yeah, caregivers is a good term in human rights and other sectors. We need human rights and we need labor rights to our organizations. Emily said, I agree with you. And Matthew, thanks a lot, Santiago. It's a great opportunity sharing this platform and gaining knowledge from you. Thanks a lot to the organizer as well for the invitation. The knowledge we have acquired will improve our service delivery. Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you a lot, all of you. So important, these discussions. Thank you, Salima.
Thank you, Santiago. It's usually a pleasure even just interacting with you and just hearing those perspectives. And they challenge us, they enrich us, and they sharpen us. And we can see a lot of similarities and also differences in the different contexts. So I want to say that we wrap up our wellness clinic today, but that doesn't mean that we've closed the door for suggestions, for comments, for questions going forward. We invite you. Because here at Inuka we are implementing the wellness program for civic actors, but we also want to respond to needs. We just don't want to we don't want to make things. We want to tailor-made the interventions, the support to respond to your needs and not to Inuka's needs, because at the end of the day, this wellness program is for you. Okay, when I say for you also, I'm a civic actor, but yeah, just coordinating this program. We've taken note of the suggestions that have been put through. There's also a proposal that we take this conversation, we deepen it a little bit further. We shall writing to you now that we have your contact. We shall be writing to you in due course just to deepen this conversation further, because there's a suggestion that has been brought up by Kepta. We just do a comparative analysis of what Santiago has just presented to us. Then we just deepen it further, and then this the collective care as a continuation of the struggle against SES, Kepta. Then 3, mobilization of community resources into collective care and wellness could be very useful. And we also want to hear from you how that looks like and what are the things that we can do together, because we want also to co-create these interventions together, because they'll be more useful if we co-create or even if we create. And I want to agree with Santiago that yes, these practices and also even in our context has been there, because if you realize, if for instance we've lost one of us, going through loss and grief, no one is told to do something. We all do something in the best way we know how. We bring like the recent cases, the recent case in Mathare where there were floods. People came with what they know how, just to ensure that we practice the collective care. So it's true, it has been there, but how do we harness it? How do we even strengthen it going forward with all these disruptions that are happening? So we are very grateful. I see Fatuma Mwinde is my sister, saying thank you, Fatuma, for joining. And I know this message can also go beyond, far and beyond. So if we have nothing else, allow me just to invite us just to visit our social media platform. So we post a lot of resources even on our website, where you can also check the available resources to undertake matters, stress, anxiety, depression. We have some tools that you can use, tools that you can use, and you have some reading materials there. So we post a lot of resources there, and also on our social media platform. Even this recording of today shall be posted on our social media platforms. But for the notes, once I receive them from Santiago, I shall, and other resources that I shall receive from him, I shall share on your emails, because we have them. So thank you so much. Thank you, Santiago. We keep talking. Thank you to all of you. Asanteni sana.
Thank you. And please have a good day.
You too.